So I see some more people have joined in. Thank you. I forgot to tell you too, maybe you already know this, but this is recorded. We record these sessions because I'm going to make you dance and do silly things. And I want to have copies of you being silly. Just joking. We record it so if people can't go to the session, they can watch it. But I wasn't joking about being silly, and I'll come back to that. So some objectives for today are really that we're just going to explore a variety of hands-on activities that are really meant to reinforce literacy and critical thinking. And then these sessions are like 90-minute sessions today. We will have time. We won't be in presentation and sharing mode the whole time. The second part of this workshop is to give you time to do something with what we do in the beginning. So apply the knowledge. So there are rules. So the rule is that I really hope that if you are somebody who doesn't usually share or doesn't want to possibly seem silly, that it would really be great if you could just leave that comfort zone, because we are going to be asked to do something and then share it with each other. I did this run through with friends of mine. I have to admit, this whole like presenting to teachers is actually, despite the role I'm in, quite intimidating to me, because I think teachers already know everything, you know? So I practice ahead of time with my most critical friends, and so they can give me feedback. And it was so funny the other night when I was doing this, because like one of them was doing this dance, and it was an evaporation dance, and it was awesome. And I thought, if this group is willing to do similar things, then I can count this as a success. Secondly, just if you can't see something, or if one of my links isn't working, or I'm going to be moving a lot between sharing my screen and then not sharing my screen, so you guys can see each other. If I forget to stop sharing my screen, please just tell me. That would be so helpful. If it seems like a time where you want to be seeing each other's faces, I would greatly appreciate you helping me in case I forget. So we're going to do, I'm going to talk about 3 different interactive ideas to inspire us. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how they're grounded in state standards. So I wanted to design something that would work for, anyone who's teaching ELA, but I also wanted to point out the connection in other disciplines. So what I've thrown up on the screen there are some vocabulary related standards. There are literacy standards for technical classes, and that could be science, social studies. They're anchor standards, so they remain the same K through 12. I had a great conversation yesterday with a music teacher who was looking at the literacy standards that she might include in a class that seems very much music and literacy. And I was thinking of these standards. And often a barrier for learning for students could be in vocabulary. If their term that is being used in class is something that someone's not familiar with, it can really make a difference in how well they access the material, or how they engage in the activity. So I've designed some activities for us to really think about exploring vocabulary and doing it in a really meaningful way for like a key concept. So we are going to do an activity where I'm going to ask you to express your understanding of something. And when you express your understanding of this term, you're going to do it through drawing, or using it in a sentence, or giving like an example and a non-example, or molding it with Play-Doh, or acting it out in some way. We're going to do this a few times. Like first, I'm just going to give a little example, and then we'll do new words. So I started with the word claim. Claim is sort of a concept. It's more than just a vocabulary word, in that it's a concept that I really need students to understand. And so many teachers are using this in their classrooms. For the purpose of this activity, I'm going to pretend that in a way like you're students in my class, and you've heard me talk about claim a lot. This is not something I would do as an assessment, the activity I'm about to do. And it's also something I wouldn't do on the first day on introducing this term. And Linda, there was a question that came up in the chat. Thank you, about is the presentation shared? So I am actually not sharing the presentation yet, but I'm going to share it at the end. So hopefully you can follow along by watching it. It's because A, I'm a control freak, and B, I don't want to give things away. Like there's things where I think if you see them, it might restrict your creativity. So anyway, so when I think of claim, I'm talking about, and this would be something like, again, we're going to pretend we're in class and you guys have heard me talk about claim. So it's the controlling idea in a written piece. Could be like the thesis or of an essay or a topic sentence. That's how I'm thinking of claim of a paragraph. And it is kind of an assertion or an idea supported by evidence and reasoning. It's not just a straight up fact. It's something that's a little meatier, and it's really the big, big idea. So my example of how I would express this is, and I'm providing examples so that everyone can get an idea, but then I'm going to ask you to give it your own try. My example would be, okay, I'm going to stop presenting for a second. And now you should hopefully be able to see what I'm showing. One example would be here. This is an example of a claim in my mind, that Ponyboy demonstrates heroic qualities throughout The Outsiders. And then I kind of made it green for go, and I made a smiley face because yay, it's a claim. And here's my non-example. Ponyboy is the protagonist in The Outsiders. That's a fact, not a claim. So what I'm asking students to do is to show me their understanding of claim by doing something like this. And then the real wacky thing that you can do is maybe you internalize things through movement, which I totally do. So when I think of a claim, I also think of it as like this thing that's so big and important that is like grounded. So when I do, you know, what I want students maybe to do is just get up and like be a claim. And it could be anything. But for me, being a claim is like this, claim. So now I would like you to take a moment, and I have to go back to sharing. Take a moment and think about how you would express claim. And then I'm going to ask for volunteers to share it in just a bit. Maybe about less than 2 minutes too. No, we don't need like major artwork. if you can try to finish up your amazing products, we're going to have an opportunity to share in the very near future. Okay. So, is there anyone who, and obviously I told you to take a risk, so hopefully there'll be someone who is willing to share their representation of claim? Oh my God, Abby's going to go first. I see her. She's ready. Go, Abby, go.
Yeah, this was a team effort of the five Rutland Town people here. We just went very basic. We like to make sure our kids know what we're expecting. So this seemed quite explanatory, and the vowel team is orange, which we thought was cute. So the kindergarten teacher had an uppercase A because that's what they're working on. We just want to throw that out there.
I love it. I love the purposeful color coordination of adding in sort of a vowel consonant stuff. You would know that I know that that's important because of my children. So thank you. All right. Maybe we can have Dawn, then Sarah. And it's great too to talk a little bit about it for us and why you made what you made.
So in attempts to avoid colonial implications, I put a little flag on a little plot of land here, and then I carved very poorly evidence into the little piece at the bottom. So this would be, one, taking a stand, claiming an idea, and then supporting it with evidence.
Awesome. Thank you. Sarah, I saw you hold something up. Do you want to show it to us and tell us about it?
So similar to Dawn's, I just have the claim on the top with a big exclamation mark because it's like my idea or my statement. And then all of the stuff I could put underneath it that it connects to in my writing. Simple.
It's great. I can't see all of you, but I see Linda holding something up and Wendy holding something up. So let's hear from Wendy and then Linda.
I made a light bulb to represent an idea.
Awesome. Thank you. And Linda.
I just used the two colors. And so the claim is the blue, and these are the legs, the evidence and reasoning. And it's very difficult for it to stand up well. And so if you have poor evidence and reasoning, your claim is just going to fall off.
Totally. Yeah. And you guys are like, well, I'll save my thought. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to do more. So what I want to talk about though, too, is when doing stuff like this with students too, it's not just about like the product and the showing, it's about the conversations that they might have while they're coming up with it. And obviously I wasn't doing that. I wasn't going around working with you, but that would be a cool next step. So I have a question before we go on. I want to talk about, oops, my music wants to play. Nope. Before I show my screen up again, we're going to do this activity one more time, but we're going to use a different word. So would anyone like to share a word that is currently in a unit you're teaching, or a big idea that you sometimes teach that you would be willing to give us that word and then just give us a brief little definition of it, so then we can make something with the idea that you want to bring. I'm going to start us getting rolled. When I did this activity with my practice the other day with my good old teacher friends, the word that my math friend gave me, I really want to represent all the contents, was slope. And it was rise. Oh, the change and the rise over run was what this friend had told me. Change over rise over run. So I just want to throw out another word there. Any other thoughts of a word that you're currently using these days? Oh, Eric, yes, please.
The big one I'm using in my music and film right now is texture.
Oh, that's great. Texture. And can you give me like your working definition of texture?
Texture is the layering of musical elements in a piece of music. So melody versus accompaniment, or it could be percussion against chords. Just the different layers that music can have.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And I see some in the chat. Ooh, infer, child labor. These are, yes. Counter argument. I think I'm gonna just, what I'm gonna do. Okay, these are great. Thank you for sharing so many. Sorry, I'm moving between multiple screens. Connotation. So I have just put in what I heard. I put in Eric's, and then the rest of you, I couldn't be that fast. So it's in the chat. So what I want to give you right now is the choice of a word. It could be one of the ones that are up here: analyze, slope, texture. It could be something that's in the chat. If you have a question about, like, well, I want to do that word, but what's the definition in your mind? Speak up and ask the group. Otherwise, you're choosing a word of your choice, and again, you're going to exemplify its meaning in one of these interactive ways. Okay, we're gonna come. Ooh, why is there an echo? We're gonna come back together, and you guys hearing an echo?
Mr. Ray, you might want to mute your mic.
Oh, thank you. I thought it was me. I was like, that didn't happen before. Again, if you'd like to share and explain your, what went into your design, that would be great. You can just jump in, or you could raise your hand and I could call on you.
I can start.
Awesome. Thanks, Mandy.
I was inspired by Eric because of an incredible coffee house he led yesterday, and my mother was always a music teacher. So I did this by hand. For texture, I don't know if you can see it worth a darn, but imagine a computer image, which I can't do, of geology layers. So in different colors, if I could, down here we've got bass, here we've got rhythm guitar, here we've got drums, here we've got lead guitar, and here we've got Hammond organ. So you've also got level of pitch, this visual of how they would be molded together.
Neat. I appreciate all those details. Thank you. Linda.
Mandy, I thought like kind of the same thing, like layering. Can you guys hear me? That works. I like, my husband's a musician, and just now spending so many years with him, I've learned like my ear will isolate those different sounds. And I didn't realize, like when I was listening to a song before, that I couldn't like pull the bass out by itself, but now I can actually like zoom in and listen to that. In the ELA classroom, we don't do music as much, but we have done vox pops before with like Soundtrap. I don't know if anyone's played with that, but you can see kind of exactly what Mandy drew, the different speakers, and then you can layer them in over each other. And so you can see like when you're bringing multiple voices in to kind of get a certain effect, and then isolating single voices. And so it's just, to me, it's kind of similar to music, like you're building this textured sound.
Todd.
So I can't really act mine out, but the idea that rolled around in my head was I had a exceptionally engaging 8th grade science teacher, and he always used way different ways to get across a concept. So I would want, without the props that I don't have, to take a raw onion, take a bite out of it, and hold it up so they can see all of the layers. And then open up a hot box catering box that had pizzas made with caramelized onions so they could see how things change and how you layer the dough, the topping, the cheese, etc. on top, and how those textures blend together to make a hopefully delicious melody.
I'm all for you bringing pizza to class, Todd.
Now I know we have a consumer science room with an oven. Now I might do that.
Food metaphors are always great. Cool. Cody.
All right, I have, this is for Infer. It's a blank sheet of paper. No, I'm just kidding. Just joking. This is Slope. I can't see if you can see me because my little thing is, can you see it? Okay, there. Yeah.
I can see you, yeah.
With the little sun up in the corner, of course. It always has to be up there, right?
Oh, perfect day. Full of powder, but blue skies the next day. Yeah. I like the slope one. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to just move to another question right now, which is, in doing this activity, the way we did it, I'm wondering how if you were doing this in your classroom, or with students to really help, solidify understanding of a certain word, what support would you provide if you were doing this in a student was struggling? Or what extensions would you provide if this for a more advanced or mature learner? Wendy?
So if you frame it as a game, if you literally play Pictionary or charades with it, it has that competitive motivation, but it also allows some students to wait before they participate while still receiving the information from others because of the way you take turns when you have an idea to go. I'm also thinking you could have them do this both as a pre-teaching and as a formative assessment. So you could gauge with like a partner share what a student already thinks about a term. And then how does that change when they model it again in a different way?
Great. I think sometimes when we ask students to do something that is kind of abstract or metaphor, it can be hard for really concrete thinkers. They want an example. So I think it's okay to just give examples as well. When you do this in large group, students have the opportunity to see each other's work and learn from each other and see different ways of thinking. What might be a drawback of doing this, though, as a group? Wendy?
I did try to wait before I opened my mouth again. There might be extra time that it takes to create a work of art and or a distraction of materials. And I could also see doing it as a large group. If we all had the same term, kids might just mimic the piece rather than coming up with a new term.
Good point. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I think risk taking too, like some people don't feel like they're good drawers. And even though they were given options, if like the multitude choose to draw, then they might feel like they should or something.
Yeah. I think that I would anticipate, and I have anticipated in doing activities like this, some of that hesitancy. And sometimes to get around that, we begin in small group. So sometimes it's a station among other things that are going on. So there's less of that pressure of performing, even when we try not to set it up like that. Okay. So some of you so I started with claim because I was going to use it again now. And some of you have already started to do the thinking that is in the next upcoming slide. So I'm moving on to a second type of activity, though, like I said, it might be similar to what some of you already did. So before I defined claim, but now I really want to talk about evidence and reasoning. I threw up the standards here again that are the anchor standards that go across disciplines. These are actually not unique to an English class or an ELA study. This idea that we have claims and we support them with evidence and reasoning goes across content areas. And again, we're going to pretend that you're in class and your teacher, who's me for this little moment, has been talking about claim, evidence, and reasoning for some time. This is not your first exposure to it. And there could be different ways of looking at these terms, especially based on your discipline. But I feel like the main idea is there's a claim, that's your controlling idea, and it needs support, and it gets that support from evidence and reasoning. Or I've worked in, sometimes people say, or I sometimes say evidence and then analysis / explanation. But just this idea that a claim needs to be supported and that we're actually calling these two separate things. One is the evidence, like text evidence, or maybe it's an image. And then the reasoning, where it's more of like the thinking from your own brain, the explanation of why that evidence supports the claim. That's like the working definition that we're going with, more or less. And now I'm going to ask that you actually build a structure. So someone kind of already did that already. It's okay. You overachiever ahead of the game. I realize that it's kind of what happens. So I'm going to play some music. I'm going to give you some time. What I'm suggesting is try to find 3 items, each one representing claim, evidence, reasoning, or maybe you interpret this a little different. That's awesome. And then build something. And it would be, again, awesome if it can be shared with the group. If you have questions or clarifications, please speak up. Otherwise, you can get building. So as I look at you, it looks like people might be done building. So does anyone, and if you share, it would be great if you could explain why you chose the pieces you chose, if there was intention behind them, though I know there's limited access to things in front of you. That's the fun of it in my mind. Amanda, go ahead. Mandy. You're muted.
Okay, so.
Oh, you know what? I have to make it bigger for you. Ooh.
So there's my claim.
Uh-huh.
And the trunk of the tree is my reasoning. And when we did this the first time, I just had claim and evidence. And the evidence is the base here. You can't see that part, but it's a leaf. And then the green Play-Doh trunk is the reasoning connecting the claim to the evidence.
Cool. I can really see that understanding of how claim and reason is rooted in evidence, and it's built on it in what you've just shared. Thank you. Now I'm looking for anyone else. I'm looking for those, I was going to say tap dances, but I realized that wasn't an option for this. It was just building. Anyone else care to share something they've created? Linda, go ahead.
I built a little pie, and so the claim would be the crust, the bottom crust. The evidence is the little two straps across the top, if you're weaving it. And then if you look inside, there's a lot of little berries, because the explanation of how the evidence supports the claim is usually where I need my students to expand. So I want a lot of the how explained in there. And so that is usually the lengthier part of their paragraph and not just the quotation or the direct evidence to support that claim.
Cool, thanks. If you have something that you maybe don't want to talk about, but you've created and you're willing to share it, go ahead and hold it up to the camera, if you can. Ooh, claim chowder. Oh, Legos. I like Todd's pyramid. Neat stuff. I see something that you're holding up, Catherine. Nice. Cool. All right. Does anyone want to, anyone who we haven't heard from at all want to speak on their creation? Okay, that's fine too. And if I were super like into being tech savvy, we could have also done breakout groups. And because like I said, right before I said, sometimes the big group share is intimidating. And even for adults, perhaps it is. But I didn't want to do breakout groups. I just wanted to kind of keep us together. And I'm really excited to see that some of you are in the same rooms together so you can have more of an authentic share. That's so great. I want to talk about how this could be modified though. Like we have in this chat right now, I know there's people that teach kindergarten and there's people that teach 11th grade. And it's really cool that we're all coming together and talking about this, but how could this, I have an idea of how something like this could be done in an elementary classroom. Even, and how something like this could be done like you could have your students do this, I'm thinking, but I'm just wondering if anyone has an idea of how they might modify it for a specific grade level or topic. If you had a thought on that.
Well, for like when I used to do high school exclusively, we would do like group pieces. So it wasn't individual and you could add complexity then. So there's one where they did a poem and they had to think of a word that represents the poem. So they choose the word themselves and then they had to create like a frozen scene to show it. So those kinds of activities. And then it's like three people together who one person has to be standing as a soldier, frozen, and the other person has to be above them. So that adds a level of complexity for the upper grades that they might need to tackle some of those more complex words.
I like that idea. Thank you. So not being someone who teaches in the elementary classroom, but being aware of what is taught, I'm thinking like younger grades too, like maybe second grade and younger. I hear talk sometimes about facts and details, or like main idea and detail. So if a term, if claim, reasoning, and evidence might not be the language that we're using, I think that I imagined that maybe the idea that a topic has three details or something, and that idea of maybe building a structure like that, I wondered if that would work in an elementary classroom. Jamie, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
So it's not a word, but for like letter sounds, you could give them a letter sound and they have to draw or build something that starts with that letter sound or a way to represent it.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. I like that one as well. It's nice to hear some of those earlier literacy ideas as well. Okay. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and I'm going to show you something that I made back when we were it doesn't matter that this is when I did it, but it was when we were remote and students were at home. An assignment that some of my middle level students did was building a structure like the claim. And this was, so there was a lot more time. And this was a product that I made that we used in the classroom as a visual as we talked about these terms. And I have LinkedIn. Well, I'm going to send you a link later where you'll have access to more information about this project that students did, but it's very similar to what you guys just did. I did want to share something with you to read. So there is this article, or there is this text, basically. It's like a one-pager, and I just put it in the chat, and it's called Why Teach with Metaphor. So everything that we've been doing, yes, it's been hands-on and building, but it's all about metaphors and comparing and contrasting. And there's actually this very interesting research study about kind of like what happens in the brain when we do this type of thinking. So I'm going to ask that you just take a minute. You can turn off your camera, and if you want, and then you can just turn it back on when I know you're ready to move on. So that'll be how I know you're ready to move on. So I'm asking that you read this one pager, Why Teach with Metaphor. So I'm going to move us back on in just in a moment. So before I actually move on, did anyone want to share a thought other than it reminded them of Grey's Anatomy? I love that. Perhaps it was. Any thoughts about this study? I know when I read this the first time, it really worked for my brain. Like I read this thing and I thought, oh yeah, how would they do that? How would we radiate this tumor? And then I read the story about the infiltration of the armies coming in at different ways. And then I was able to think about how you might radiate the tumor. And so that's really, I mean, I love hands-on and I love trying to get kids moving and getting to use art or movement or something physical if that's how they're going to connect to concepts. But I also wanted to point out that it's so imperative for our brain to do that type of learning, because, you know, there's a student who, when you write up on the board, and at least I've seen, you know, my experience is that when there's a student in my classroom and I'm writing claim on the board and I'm pointing at it in an essay, they're not getting that the claim is this, like, what does it really mean, a controlling idea? So I try to teach in metaphor, like a claim is like a really big thing. It's like big flashy lights or staking something in the ground. And there's going to be a different type of metaphor that clicks for different people. So when we give students that opportunity to think about it themselves, they might actually, that's where the making meaning happens. I'm thinking about the many different ways this group just represented ideas, but when they were explaining that idea, it was clear, like a blueberry pie versus a structure, like a kind of simple structure. The conversation showed the thinking, and that's really where it is. And then, you know, for research sakes, there's this McReel where they looked at different instructional strategies that you might do in your classroom. And I know that the Venn diagram doesn't sound like anything crazy and innovative, but there's a reason why I think so many people do classify things, use metaphors, analogies, comparing. They do say that it's like a high percentage gain of students' achievement and learning when we teach using metaphors, or giving them opportunities to classify and compare, give non-examples, examples. So I wanted to share the science behind what we did. The last thing I wanted to share that kind of fits in is like my mind of like interactive teaching tool is something that maybe I would use in my classroom as a visual, and really guided this idea that there's parts within parts, and really helping people see the structure of an essay. I know sometimes teachers have students make foldables. That's another way to approach this. But some teachers have sort of like a poster in their room that looks like this one, where they're showing that perhaps the structure of a full essay. And then they would go to the introduction and open it up. And when you open it up, you see perhaps the parts of the introduction. Now, you might not use these exact words, but I think you get the idea. Similarly, if you open up one of the body paragraphs, you might see the parts of the body paragraph. Same with conclusion. And so this is something that, you know, I've seen used in a classroom. I've also, as a teaching tool in the front of the room, I've also seen students create their own similar things. And I've also seen it as not the outline that they use to follow, but this is actually the way they do their writing. Again, this really depends perhaps on the level. Let me just go back. So I did want to just give a moment if anyone had a connection or a thought on a pop-up outline kind of idea.
Sandy, I have a metaphor for hooks that I like to use. And this is like with the higher level students. So once they have gotten essays down, but they feel like they need that hook every single time. And so I equate like hooks to handshakes, like your first impression. And so if it's a really weak handshake, that's the first impression. So it's actually kind of better to leave the hook off if it's just tagged on artificially. So there's this need that they feel like they need that hook and there's no way to write an essay without it. But if the hook is actually less sophisticated than the rest of the writing, then it's that weak handshake. And so that's the first impression. So getting them to really evaluate their hooks and whether they're doing what they want them to do.
I like that. I know I have also I like that metaphor that you're explaining. And I know, I feel like there's so many essays I've read that start off with like, have you ever had a hero? To keep with my pony boy thing that I said before, it was like, do you have a hero in your life? And then every essay is coming in with this kind of generic question. I think writing a strong hook can be really a skill for students. And I think you make a great point there. Like if it's not serving the purpose, it could be left out. So another metaphor. Thanks, Linda.
Like with that question, like the students were reading a poem and it had to do with like soldiers and stuff. And it's like, have you ever killed someone? I was like, how many people are going to relate to that?
Well, that does grab you. Have you ever killed someone? But yeah.
Similarly,
no, go ahead.
Sandy, go ahead. I was going to say that when I have my students create a hook, I have them envision, or not envision, I don't know what you would use for hearing version of envisioning, but consider how movie trailers summarize in a dramatic way a story. So, for when we read A Long Walk to Water, imagine you're alone in the desert with no one to help you survive. And I kind of get, sort of dramatic film trailer voice to kind of draw them into the more dramatic narrative version of it.
Awesome. Thanks.
We also use, and I know we shared this with you on Wednesday, the quote sandwich metaphor.
Yeah.
So you have your bread and then, the meaty part is that, reasoning. That's where you want to really have your, meaty part of the sandwich or paragraph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that metaphors can really help connect. I do know that I don't know. My students always told me that I'm making them hungry because I always use food metaphors, but I can't help it. But yeah, and the hamburger metaphor for an essay, and I have seen that work in so many different grades. I've seen it work with young students and older students. So I put something in I linked the slideshow into the slideshow that you were just looking at. I've linked it into the chat because I'm moving to the part of this where I want to give you time to apply or feel inspired and do something. I have created a Padlet, and that's linked into the slideshow. It's on slide 17. And in that Padlet, which I'm also presenting right now, you don't need to sign up for Padlet. Like you just can go to my link. I think it should work for you to be able to go to this. And I just put in a bunch more stuff that I thought of that is kind of related to hands-on and critical thinking and foldables and a little more. There's a video of me presenting my claim structure thing, but it might not make sense, but I just put it in. I put in the research behind why we use metaphors, like the study I referred to, if you wanted to do that work of looking into that. And I'm coming back to a new tab. So what I wanted to do was kind of end our together time, you're welcome to stay on. But this is your apply and take away time. So you could maybe reflect on what we did. Maybe you want to refine something that you're already doing that's interactive. You want to explore the resources that I put in the Padlet or design something new that you've never done. But we built in time for you to do something. And I will be on in case you have questions or thoughts. Otherwise, you should have access to this slideshow now. And you can, I'll link in the Padlet as well. The Padlet link is within the slideshow, but I'm going to link that into the chat. So you can also check that out. And, this Padlet's going to continue to exist, so you can share your own ideas on it. If there's something that you like to do, please, by all means, share your great ideas on that. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for attending and participating.
Sandy, sorry, I missed the direction. I had somebody pop in that